Welcome to Washoe Live, the podcast about really interesting people who live here in northern Nevada and making our lives better because they're contributing to our communities and our neighborhoods and the overall quality of life. I'm Nancy Lewinhagen, and one of the goals of this podcast is to have interesting conversations with someone living here doing something very unique in their professional or personal life, or both in this case. And perhaps even something that you may have never known happens in our community. You're about to meet our two guests today who serve as chaplains for the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. And I'd like to introduce them both. I've got Deborah Whitlock Lax from the Bethel AME Church in Sparks. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I also have Ginger Howell. Ginger's with the Great Basin Chaplain Corps. And of course, both of you work with the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. Welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today and allowing us to learn what it is that you do for the Sheriff's Office and of course, out in the community. So, Ginger, I'll start with you and then we'll go to Deborah. Just introduce yourself. Where are you from and how did you land here?
Hi, I'm Ginger Howell, and I'm from Houston, Texas, as you might see by a little accent still. But I was with the Harris County Sheriff's Office there as a chaplain, as another lead chaplain for a number of years. I looked over all the volunteer chaplains. We had 50 of them. And we went out in our community and did various things quite similar to what we were doing for the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. We did ride-alongs. We did death notifications for the ME's office, which we do not do here. We would visit injured deputies in the hospital. Some of us were on our peer support team and did critical incident debriefs. And, of course, unfortunately, line of duty funerals. We helped with that.
And you now manage, there's 6 of you.
There's 6 of us on our team at Washoe County Sheriff's Office.
And I have 2 of them right here with me.
Yes.
Deborah, how about you? Introduce yourself, please. How'd you land here?
Well, I'm Reverend Dr. Deborah Whitlock Lax. I actually was from St. Louis, Missouri, and was translated here. Okay. Just landed here. Anyway, I'm part of a Methodist tradition which will assign pastors to different places. My background in St. Louis was to work with the medium security prison as a chaplain, and was literally able to go beyond the bars to help people, the inmates actually, to press through their issues from a faith-based posture. My husband and I were the only ones who were allowed to go beyond the bars and also assigned to suicide watch with the inmates. When I actually got here, I began to look and determine how can a pastor come alongside of the police officers, and peer support was that entity that allowed for such. It was important to me as an African-American pastor to make sure that I communicate that Bethel Church stands alongside of our law enforcement officers, regardless of if they're in a green uniform, blue uniform, gray uniform, whatever uniform they're in, and to be able to come alongside and be an encouragement and a very present person within the different agencies that there are.
What a wonderful service you do for our community that I think many of us probably don't think about until, of course, we're in a situation where you're there. There's 6 of you. It's a big community. How do you work this?
In Houston, we had 50 chaplains for 5 million people.
Okay.
So it's Gideon's army, biblically. But we do what we can. I know that people are curious about it. I was on a ride-along a couple weeks ago and in my full chaplain uniform, and the person was very curious why a chaplain was on his call with the deputy, because it wasn't a crisis type call, but he was like, "Who are you? What do you do?
Wow.
Why are you here?"
Right. So you guys operate on call? Do you sometimes just go along with them?
Well, it really is kind of an ebb and flow, a push and a pull.
Okay.
So we try to make ourselves present. I tend to go to the detention center, and hang around with the exec staff and the administrative staff. Sometimes I'll go over to the dispatch. That's been a while for me to do that. But it's really a push and a pull. So hopefully, so often, if you can imagine, a chaplain, a clergy shows up, the first thing that runs in the mind is something's wrong. There is a crisis. Someone died. And so we try to make sure that we're somewhat present, normalize the presence of people who have faith, people who are able to listen, so that it becomes normal. But the pull is the crisis situations, where if there is a police involved shooting, it's important that chaplains come along when invited to at least be present. We may never engage. We may never speak to anyone. But if someone's having a crisis, if someone needs to talk, if someone needs to unpack, then there's a listening ear that they can pour into, without the concern that, oh, I'm going to lose my job because I'm feeling this way or that way. And thank goodness, Sheriff Balaam's really very on top of understanding the mental health of his staff. And so years ago, mental health, anything was a bad thing, a badge of dishonor. Oh, you're not being able to control your emotions. But thank goodness we've moved into an era that says, yes, speak about what's happening. Because if we understand that law enforcement officers see, almost 8 times as much as in crisis as we do in a lifetime, and that their life expectancy is only 5 years after retirement, then it is imperative that we recognize that, yes, they not only need mental health care, but they also need spiritual care as well.
And I know that that's something that you spoke of, Ginger, when we began talking before we started recording, that it's just as important for the staff as it is obviously the public.
Absolutely. We do go into dispatch. My mom was a dispatcher, and I have a great love for dispatch. So everybody goes into dispatch at one time or another, but I make sure that I go in there. Shout out to our other chaplains. We have Rob Pierce, who is actually here in the building because he's on a planning commission. And then we have Mike Hogan, who is a retired detective out of Illinois. We have Ree Medeiros, who is actually a deputy, and he is down in detention. And he's also on the hostage negotiation team. And then we have Greg Watson, who is with the VA's home, the veterans home. So everybody kind of has a little bit or a lot of experience with law enforcement, and I think that's why we're able to speak into their lives. Another good thing about chaplains is we have confidentiality. We have clergy privilege. So it's privileged communication if it's one-on-one with us. Like if I'm in a patrol car, I do ride-alongs a couple times a month, and whatever's said in the patrol car stays in the patrol car. And so they have that outlet where they can talk to somebody and know that it's not going to go anywhere.
I never knew that. That's very interesting. You both, you land in people's lives probably when it's maybe one of the darker moments.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. If you think about a police officer, they meet and greet the bad days of people. You think about a chaplain, we not only meet and greet the bad days of the public, but we also meet the bad days of officers. And so it's important that they have an outlet to speak about. And I love, that Chaplain Ginger spoke of the confidentiality piece, because sometimes we just need to decompress. Sometimes we just need an ear to listen. Sometimes we need to be able to vent without having to give an apology as to why we're feeling the way we're feeling. Because if you kind of think about, well, where do police officers go to have their bad day? They either go home to their spouse and children, they go to, Dr. West, or they come to a chaplain or a peer support team member. And so it's important that we, as you know, if the public is listening, that we allow ourselves to see that law enforcement officers are human first. And yep, they're the keepers of the law. Yep, they're the peacekeepers of our community, but they're human. And so when they come across someone who disrespects their office or their uniform, they have to process that somewhere. Yeah.
Can you describe a typical day for me?
For a chaplain?
Sure.
So we all have different things that we choose to do since we're volunteers. So a typical day for me might be doing a ride along, and there's 3 different shifts. There's day shift, night shift, and a swing shift. So I'll pick different shifts and ride with different deputies to kind of get to know them. Or we could go into dispatch and hang out with the dispatchers for a couple hours and talk with them. We can actually be called into dispatch if there's been a very bad critical incident. Then we would have that opportunity to go in with a dispatcher and pull them off the floor and talk with them in a room and let them vent, which is a very good thing for the department to let us to do. We also do what I call walkabouts, where we walk about par, and I take food because I'm from the South, and food is a necessary thing.
Everyone loves food.
Yeah, everybody loves food.
Yeah.
So chaplain shows up.
That might be a cliche. You know, bring some donuts.
Yeah, I bring food. They're like, hey, what'd you bring? But so I just go around, put eyes on everybody, and ask them how their day's going, how's their week going. And sometimes I'll get prayer requests if they have a family member that's facing surgery or has cancer or, something really big. They'll ask for prayer, and I keep that confidential. I don't really spread that. So it just depends on what's going on. Now, if there's a big critical incident like an injury of a deputy, of course, we're around a little bit more just to make sure everybody's mentally okay. We also do trainings. So Deb and I and all the other chaplains are on our peer support group. So we do training every other month, and it's usually on trauma-related type topics. Or we might have a debrief after a critical incident where we're called to sit with not only our people, but other agencies across northern Nevada. The rural agencies really have nothing. And so Washoe County has been asked a few times to come in after they've had a critical incident to do a debrief and kind of normalize what they went through. So.
We've traveled to Incline Vision.
We go up the incline
and
visit with them.
It just ties everyone together. We also will do community service type events. The sheriff, for instance, has a prayer breakfast, and the chaplains will show up and just be that presence in the room. They may call and say, "Hey, can you do a prayer of invocation at a particular event from one of the agencies?" We'll go and do an invocation. I've actually sang. She sounds good.
Oh. She sings really good.
The national anthem for those particular events, police symposiums. All kinds of things. So we're engaged at many different levels.
And you, of course, have a congregation.
I do. Bethel puts on a law enforcement service during the National Law Enforcement Day, where we invite all the agencies that can get in the room to come, and the service is designed, geared, the message, everything is geared around making sure that every officer knows that they're loved and loved by God, loved by our congregation, and the community leaders, as well as the chaplains, will come in and, offer words of encouragement. Sometimes we'll get, messages from a senator to videotape, a videotape message to come in. Ginger has come in and done some wonderful things. So it's just important that we don't separate law enforcement versus community. We must first show that we're humans. We're part of the human race. And so as we go about, I know it may sound kind of strange. Wow, you're volunteering. But if you think about, when I've gone on a ride along, I always say drive by, and Sheriff says,
don't call it that.
PDABs, don't call it that. A ride along, and you watch officers go into the darkness, go into where the crises are. That's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Front row seat.
So how do you train? How do you make sure both? I'll start with you, Ginger. How do you get that inner ability to continue to do something like this?
I rely on my faith. I have a strong family behind me. My husband is kind of my silent partner, like Deb's husband is. That he's the one that kind of maintains what's going on at the house. I have a disabled daughter, and so somebody usually has to be with her, and so he's the one that takes care of that because he's retired now. He actually grew up in Ely, so that's why people say, "Why did you come from Houston to Nevada?" It's because he grew up in Ely and wanted to come back to Nevada, But how do I do it is prayer. I spend time in nature. I do nature photography. I have 2 German Shepherds that I love, and we play together. And so I try to manage the darkness that I see or I'm, part of out there in the community. But we all, I think, and I speak probably for the rest of the chaplains, as there's people of strong faith. Their faith in God carries them through the darkness.
How about you?
You ask, how do we train?
Mm-hmm.
Part of training, we have the bi-monthly. Is it bi-monthly? How do you
Every
say
other
that? Every other month. It's not bi-monthly. Every other month, there's training. There's books that we read.
Yeah.
There are workshops that we can go to. Ginger does more going to the workshops, but and then we have each other, right? When we're going through issues, it's not a matter of isolating and absorbing and sucking it in and getting it over with, but we'll call out to each other and say, "Hey, I'm going through this," or "Yep, I've been a part of this conversation," and we'll reach out to each other and just gain that support. Obviously, faith has a lot to do with one's strength and stability, but our faith also says that we are a community, and so community is a huge part of it. We cannot say that we support law enforcement officers and not allow them also to support us. And so there are some people that we can literally reach out to, our peer support team, to be able to debrief and say, "Hey, this is what's going on." And that's why the debriefings are so important, because everybody is involved with regards to needing to release and let go.
I think about just the work between, and I know there's 6 of you total, but just between the 2 of you, what you must see in the community and know that other people don't, just because of your work. Do you ever see trends or anything that you would say, "Oh gosh, this is happening and that's happening," and where as you debrief and get together?
You might not mind me. So as a pastor, I do see trends that happen, and of course that always will reflect to the law enforcement, right? And so that sometimes we see the trends when the economy crashes, homelessness goes up, food insecurity goes up, theft goes up, right? All kinds of things happen. So is there a trend right now? Yeah, there is. The economy is tanking right now. But the cool thing is that there's enough people in the community that realizes that, and we're able to come alongside of both sides that have to police, as well as those who have to maintain the law. I think what's wonderful about our community, and especially our law enforcement leadership, is the open door policy. That as a pastor, I can call upon Chief Nance or Sheriff Balaam and Chief Crawford at any time and say, "Hey," and what the coolness is because I do have a relationship that's a little bit closer than most. As a chaplain, we're able to connect and say, "Yeah, it's not your side versus my side, my member versus your member, but let's get together and find a solution."
One of the trends that I see is real unfortunate, and that is the hopelessness among young people. we've had a lot of teen suicides in the past couple years, and unfortunately, it's not going away. And I really, really would like to see more mental health support in our schools for our young people who are going through a lot of stress. And they're young and they don't know how to process stress as well as some adults. And not all adults process stress well either. But that's one of the trends that I have seen, unfortunately, is a lot of hopelessness among young people. And we would like to just say, don't give up. Better times are ahead. But sometimes they don't have that mentorship, an adult to come alongside and give them a different point of view. When you're in a very dark place, you tend to have blinders on that's all you see is the darkness. You can't see the things that are light around you. And sometimes they need somebody to come alongside and say, hey, let's move those blinders away a little bit. And there's better things coming. There's good things in your life that you're not seeing right now. But because they're young and overwhelmed, they tend to run to suicide. And that's very sad and very unfortunate.
Heartbreaking. And I would think that both of you too, and all of your support in your group has access and understands how to get people to resources.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
a big part of
Yes. That's what we were just working on last month is we're working on, with peer support, is a list of resources for us internally at the sheriff's office of organizations, nonprofits, people that we can call for whatever situations. And that's really important to know. TIP, Trauma Intervention Program, also does a really good job of providing resources to people in the community. So,
And I like the resources are great, but there's also the MOST team,
right.
yes.
And let's help mobile outreach. What does it stand for?
What's support
MOST.
team?
I should know. Support
I should
team.
know that too.
Mobile
I
outreach
was just
support
say
team.
strategic team, but I was like, no, that doesn't
And
sound
hope
right.
teams, which
Right.
The homeless, yeah.
yeah, homeless.
And that's important, right? Because if someone calls out on someone who's having a mental breakdown and they're behaving in such a way that would trigger a negative response, you've got a professional mental health specialist that is able to say, yeah, let me engage her. This is what you can do. And that has been, I think, a really great benefit.
Helpful. Well, I saw that. I was on a ride along Friday, and a man was having a mental health crisis, and another team showed up, and it was a MOST team member, and was making an assessment of this guy and got him help, got him to a place that could help him right there. So that was a wonderful thing to watch.
Critical.
I know the work you do is difficult, and certainly we're talking about that. At the end of the day, it must be so rewarding to help to be in a position to help people. Is that something that one thing that maybe people don't know that you do every day?
It's true. It is. It's always nice to have gratitude and to be thanked for what you do. We don't look for, awards or appreciation or whatever, but you do get something when you give. You get something back to you that is really worth doing it again and again and again. I had end of life situation in Houston, and I was with the family as they were pulling their loved one off life support, and I was just there as a presence. I was just there with the family, and I got the nicest card from the family that said, "We could not have made it through that day except that you were with us." And that's worth more to me than any award or achievement or whatever, is just knowing that I was there in somebody's darkest time and was able to be even just a little bit of help to them.
You both seem like that type of person to me as well, Deborah.
Yeah, of course. Words cannot convey what you get out of it, but certainly there's always something that one gets out of volunteering, and to walk alongside and be able to dismantle what often the media likes to portray, because forgive me, media here, but what bleeds reads. So what does that mean? That means that oftentimes when officers are depicted, it is not what they're doing great behind the scenes. It's what is challenging in the community that often will stir up community unrest and get those ratings up. What's cool with us is that we get to see the human behind the badge. We get to see, the compassion that officers come with every day, not just a moment. Yep, there's knuckleheads out there on all sides. There's knuckleheads out there. But the majority of our law enforcement officers are there because they want to be there, and they love their job, and they want to protect and serve their communities. And so when we see that, at least when I see that, there's something that's gratifying that gives you hope about humanity, right? And to just see that. I give you an example. Bethel AME Church gives a Halloween trunk and treat every year, and the agencies show up. They put their cars in park, and they fill their trucks and trunks with candy, and they'll bring a motorcycle or a SWAT car. Or, this last time they brought a dog, and and to watch them engage, as it's almost it is just surreal to see the engagement, and then to see the public kind of surprised that, yeah, they're engaging, and they're having fun, and they're giving out candy,
And they're nice.
and they're nice, and that's so important, because young people need to see that officers want to help and want to serve and want to have fun, and they're serious, but they get to see another side.
As you do. And I want to thank you both for coming in today and telling us your stories. You have an up-close personal relationship with a community that few of us do. And thank you both, Ginger and Deborah.
But thank you for having us.
having
Let me say this. The citizens can do what we're doing. I encourage every community person to do a ride-along with Sparks or Reno or the sheriff, to get up and close and personal, to be a part of the Citizens Academy, to engage, to be very much involved, because when you see something, you have to say something, right?
It's a great message. Thank you both so much for joining us.
That's fun.
It is fun, and to learn about both of you, and thank you what you're doing for having me. Thank you, and we will be back next month with another edition of Washoe Life. Until then, enjoy your Washoe Life.